Hey everybody, it's Crypto Agent speaking. Welcome to today's episode of the Net Show podcast. And today is actually very special because for the very first time ever, you know, you rarely ever get to get the chance to talk to see many people talk who are outside of the crypto world, right? Well, we managed to kind of like just talk mainly on our podcast within the financial and markets industry. Today, we're going to discuss how it all kind of like connects with a topic that may seem to be far, far distant, but it truly is not. We're going to talk about sales marketing and how it all incorporates in overall investment. And today, here with me is the man, the legend, the person who I truly looked up to for quite some time, ever since 2019, where I got not only one copy of his book, which is called Sell Like Crazy, but I got actually two copies for some reason, and I would love to know why in a second. This has been like international bestseller in many, many places wherever you go. One of the best books I've ever literally read. Uh, like super, super, super amazing book. And like I said, the author and the founder of King Kong, Sabri Suby, straight from Australia. How is it going, Sabri?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. That was one fine and kind intro.
Yeah. I mean, this is completely honest. Like I've watched so many of your videos, I've watched so many of your materials, so many of your tips. And in all honesty, you are the very first person in my life who I truly bought a book from after seeing a Facebook ad. Like, and you were a complete stranger to me that time. So I literally saw your Facebook ad and like I decided, okay, I want to know what this guy is about, right? This is so much entertaining, and that's how I actually fell in love with what you wrote for the book itself. But you know, again, why did you send me two copies? It was like so good to have already one, but then I got a boom, another postal message,
Because I
another
was like,
postal
is that
service.
crypto burb that just ordered my book, man? I better look after that guy. Send him two copies. No, I would love to say that it was planned. It was probably some issue with our fulfillment house, but I'm glad that
Yeah.
it got to you all the way over in Poland in good condition.
Yeah. Speaking of over deliveries, right? This is always how you actually just
Yeah, we had
should
to
reach out
start.
to the
We
people.
front load the value, give you two books. You thought you were getting one. Surprise, surprise.
I know. That's like a good one. Yeah, like quick straight point. There are a couple of questions that do relate to the markets. I do love to hear about your success story, like taking it in a brief past, kind of like a timeline of your history. But first of all, like, why did you decide to join me on the podcast at all?
Um, that's a good question. To be honest, my assistant kind of vets everything. And she said, "Yeah, this looks like one that's going to be worthy of your time." I said, "Cool, let me do it."
Love it, love it, love the fact that actually was introduced this way, because I'll make sure it is. I'll do make sure it is actually, and there are going to be a couple of questions that are that I tried my best not to make it generic. So
Good.
we'll try to go creative on those. I'll try to get some challenge for you. It's 7 a.m. for me here in Poland, so I need to change myself as well, and we're going to make sure to actually make it fine. So Sabri Subi, the legend, the man, like I said, is here. Sabri, talk to me a little bit of your success story, how it's happened for you to be basically who you are today, this amazing, amazing person and one of the best marketers in the world.
Yeah, I guess I'll give you a brief kind of rundown. Is I was raised by a single parent mother in a small beach town in Australia called Byron Bay that has since become quite famous, but it wasn't very famous when I was growing up there. Watched my mum hold down three jobs to kind of provide an upbringing for me and my sister. And really just watching her go through that experience is like what forged a very strong work ethic in me since a young child. I, used to wake up when I was 7 years old and go to the cafe and help my mum set up the cafe, which was her first job. And then I got my first job grinding peanut butter for $2.50 an hour in a health food shop. And then kind of got my first like real job when I was 16 years old selling ink cartridges over the phone. And I sucked at that really badly. And then I figured out how to not suck at that. And then I became their top salesperson, and I moved over to London, and I traveled around London and Europe and went over to the States selling everything that you could possibly imagine and doing the shittest jobs that you could imagine. And at all of those roles, I was always the number one salesperson at every company that I've ever worked for, however long that I've worked there for. And kind of that's where I got like, I fell down the rabbit hole of like sales and growing businesses and being on the front lines of capitalism, going out there and asking strangers for money, basically. And then I got involved in marketing. I started my first business when I was 21 years old. I've sold a few businesses. I've run a few into the ground. And like through like the first exposure was with sales. And that kind of got me into the mindset of like human psychology and understanding what motivates people. I have made over 1 million cold calls in my life. And that's from being on the phones, at 16 years old, and then being on automatic dialers that were making like $800 a day for just years on end. And you learn a lot about people. I called like people from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, race, religion, you name it. I've spoken to so many people, and that's like when you're subjected to so much of that, you really learn a lot about people, and you learn what motivates them, what keeps them up at night, how to get somebody to open up, all of those things. And then I kind of, started doing marketing and got tasked with always, how do we bring in new customers? Like it's the number one thing like that all businesses face is like, how do I get more customers? And, in all of those businesses that I ran, that was always my responsibility. It was like, you need to figure out how to make the cash register ring. And that was when I started to learn about digital marketing and SEO and fall down that rabbit hole. And yeah, in all of those businesses, that was my task. And at some of those businesses, I had to hire agencies, I had to hire employees that were going to do this stuff, and realized very, very quickly that like no one really knows what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. Like you've got like the gurus who'll sell courses online and never build real businesses. And they talk about that they know it, but they don't really know it. And then in addition to that, like these agencies, they just talk about intangibles, and this is how many views this pre-roll ad got, this is how many impressions you got, or so many people saw this thing, but I could never pay any of my staff with those views or those impressions. So that was when I was like, hey, like I see a huge opportunity here, because this is a problem that I genuinely have. Like I'm trying to hire people or hire agencies to do this, but they don't know how to do it. But I know that I know how to do it, but I just didn't have the time to do that and everything else. And that was when I was like, hey, like I see there's a huge opportunity here to solve this incessant problem that all businesses face. And that was what kind of led me to starting King Kong and helping people solve that problem.
I love it. I love it. That's a quite of a rundown. And in all honesty, I mean, it's very inspiring. I think for many people to realize that your company, you're the founder for King Kong, which is actually one of the fastest growing digital marketing agencies in the world, right? And it's not only limited to Australia itself. I mean, you're getting like at the top, literal top of the world. And so, I want to make sure to congratulate you on that. This is an amazing achievement, man. So well done. And
Thank you.
one of your chapters, actually, like I said, in this beautiful book, So Like Crazy, you talk about an investment which is wiser than saving stocks or real estate, right? So we want to make sure Grant Cardone never hears that, actually. But you do tell me like you're making a lot of references to these financial markets, right? And we actually, that our community is what is actually driven by the financial markets here. So did you actually have any sort of like experience in there?
Like, look, it's something that when you get, large sums of capital and it's sitting around and you think about what is the best way to utilize this, right? And you go through the normal route of like, okay, like say I put this in the S&P 500, what's it going to do? What's it going to do in bonds? What's this going to do, in crypto? What is it going to do in real estate, right? And if you remove crypto from that, and you just have a look at like the traditional assets that produce cash flow and give you a return, depending on either you're looking at like real estate as a total, depending on what source you cite, it's typically around a 12% return, unless you're like buying and reconstructing and flipping the homes and stuff. I'm talking about like large portfolios, like with lots of money in them, and wide scale. It might go a little bit higher than that. Some people say 15, some people say 18, but on average, it's about 12% from the sources that I've looked at. And like we're talking about over a decade or so, right? And not just a bull market or not a bear market either, but just averaging it out. And then if you look at like, typical returns in the stock market, 8 to 12% is kind of what you're looking at. So like when you're looking at that, and then in Australia, like in terms of our high interest term deposit or savings accounts, like you're lucky, absolutely lucky to be getting like 2 to 3% on your money, right? So when you look at that and you think about like, okay, I've got like cash reserves and it's rotting in the bank with the inflation, and like I'm not even talking about today's inflation, I'm just talking about normal inflation. It's deteriorating over time. Where is the best place to put that money? So I'm not like, I don't trade the markets or do any of that stuff. Like I'm a business builder, that's what I do. And I like to deploy capital where I have a little bit more control over that capital, and there's a skill element into multiplying that, and I'm in control of some of those forces. So that's the extent of like my exposure to the financial markets.
Gotcha. I mean, this makes complete sense. Like when you think about it, any sort of like business you build or own, although we know that the difference, you kind of like differentiate between the business owners and the business builders who actually focus actively versus passively on building and contributing and developing and scaling and so on. Do you actually kind of like track any of the like economic stages? Like, do you track adjust your business for the inflation? Do you have like some special strategies that, let's say, this inflation is so high this year that I need to switch my marketing, I don't know, major marketing investment strategy in my company to track
No,
something like that?
yeah, like I guess I'm getting feedback from the market much quicker than like the government reporting, right? Because like I day trade attention every single day. So like since like that I have been speaking to you, like hundreds of strangers on the internet have given me money, right? And that's by going out and buying attention in the form of ads, and then flipping that attention into money and getting people to buy products and invest not only their time and their attention, but their financial resources, right, as well. So that's the thing that I use to kind of dictate things. It's like, yeah, okay, like people are saying that inflation's at this rate, or that like we're about to go into a very cold economic winter, which, I do believe is coming. But the thing that I get the direct feedback from within the hour, within the minute, is I put $1 out, I put 5, 10, 100, $10,000 out, and then how much comes back immediately. And we've got real-time data of the market and what it is that we're seeing. So no, I let that dictate things for me, rather than just like there's the macro and the micro. And of course, as a business owner, you need to look at the macro and you need to understand like, okay, we're getting into a situation where wages are increasing, inflation is happening. There is going to be some financial turmoil in the seas ahead. So you just need to, like, I'm always big on having big cash reserves to protect myself in those situations, because I'm a paranoid individual and I like to not worry about money, and I want to have like enough of a runway in the bank account where I don't even need to be thinking about that at all. It doesn't even enter into my mind on a daily basis. So I can focus on the main thing in growing the business and keeping pushing it forward, rather than wondering how I'm going to make payroll. So that's the things that I look at. Yes, as out of interest, like, I have an interest in like large hedge fund managers and what they're doing, and Blackstone and a couple of these big boys. But like in terms of like how that influences the decisions and actions that I make every day, that's very much based on real-time data.
Gotcha. It makes complete sense. That's also what I think observing on my side with the Bourbonist. And I got to be very honest. Like, I trust you, right? But so many people, kind of like, just like you mentioned so many times, are extremely skeptic these days, right? The skepticism has never been so high. And if you read, in your book, and you factually compare, those, top performing legends like Warren Buffett, right, making pulling like 20% a year, and then you put in a book like this, 3,084% ROI on sales that you pull out for one of your clients. Like, what's the catch there, right? That's the question that people may ask. Like, what's the catch, man?
Yeah, like I think that like it's unfortunately like the different things with advertising is that it has this stigma that it's like people look at it as a cost on their balance sheet, and like most of these people are listening to accountants who don't know how to grow businesses. They know how to count beans. And like they are looking at the advertising as a line item of cost, and they're taught to reduce costs. So they're like, hey, like I need to reduce this. Like most business owners wear around as a badge of honor the fact that they don't advertise and that they get all their clients from word of mouth, right? And it's like it's because they don't have the lens of, they don't look at it as an investment. And these are the same people that might have like 500 grand sitting in the bank account, $4 million sitting in the bank account, and they are letting that money rot every year, and they're not even, let alone doing any investment with it, but they won't invest it into advertising, right? And they don't see how that they can multiply it, because the moment that you can track it and you actually know how, like you send this money soldier out and this is how many money soldiers come back and this is what the return is, then it just takes a different lens. And it's something that people struggle with, because there's a very few people that really know how to turn advertising into profit. And there isn't any catch. Like I guess the catch is that it's difficult to do. And it's not
Gotcha.
like, if you're willing to walk through the fire and have the short-term losses of losing money in buying the data and finding out what works, and you like, I look at money as like a video game, and it's just tokens. Like I'm not emotionally attached to it, right? Because if you get emotionally attached to it and you run some ads and you lose like a couple of $1,000, you're like, oh shit, like that's my money, like I lost that money. And then like you get timid, right? Where I think the best like framework to look at it is like, I've got like whatever it is, 5 grand, 10 grand assigned to run this marketing test, and I'm completely fine losing all of that money. And I'm happy to lose that money to then find out what works and then hopefully make some money, right? And so I'll invest this $10,000. And a lot of the time, people invest that $10,000 and they do make money on it, right? But the goal is to kind of, on that initial test, in my opinion, would be to break even while you buy the data and you find out what works and you get a system to turn advertising into profit. And then let's just say that you spend 10 grand and you make $2,000. The best way to look at it is that that's $2,000 that the internet gave you for free. The internet gods have come down and they have given you this money for free. And then you just remove all emotional attachment on that money and you just keep on further investing it into the machine as a feedback loop, and never become like emotionally attached to that figure, and just keep growing that nest egg. And just think like, even if I lost it all, which I'm not going to do, like that is all free. It came from nothing. Like it was a surplus to me running this exercise to create that money, right? But it's just people aren't willing to look at it like that. They want to spend $10,000 and make $100,000 the first time they advertise. Well, that's just not the way that it works. Like you don't get like 100% return. You don't get like 1,000%, 3,000%, a 500% return on your money without any risk. It's like anything. There's a risk and reward ratio. You know that best being in crypto. If you can't handle the volatility, just get out. Get out of the kitchen. But if you want those eye-watering returns, you got to be comfortable with it.
Got you. Yeah, really, it makes complete sense, right? And then I was actually, pretty interested myself, like in the way you would respond to it, right? Because like seeing such major returns, that you refer to in the book, many people kind of like lighten up their eyes, and they would be just like, yeah, let's do this, right? Whatever it takes. Like they don't realize the time and an actual learning curve it takes. So it's very fair you're mentioning that.
Yeah,
I
and
have a couple of points.
we do a good job in also telling those people, if they book in phone calls with us, we're not going to just be like, hey, just be like, you need to open up. a crypto wallet, because there's going to be so much money flowing into your bank account from this that you're not going to know what to do with it. Like, we're very, realistic and accurate with how we paint it out and what that journey looks like and what is going to be required.
Got you. It makes sense. I mean, I have a couple of points down the list on my side as well. And, while kind of like, working on revealing a little bit of your ultimate business, secrets, if you will, and how it all kind of like wraps towards the financial, well, markets industry, because this is where it's all kind of like starting to come together, right? This is where it's all kind of like starting to come as a one, regardless if it's investing in a stock market or investing in cryptos like Bitcoin, whatever. Investment in your own business, aka digital marketing as well, is something that is somehow comparable. It also gets you certain returns and excess over certain risk that you actually take, right? So
Yeah.
this is where it's all starting to come together. But like knowing there's this recession, we've slightly touched upon that already. This recession coming, there are tons of signs. Putting it more scientifically, there is so-called inverted yield curve when the bonds are going crazy. Basically, the governments, the central banks don't know what to do with the interest rates anymore. They just go crazy to tame the inflation. But do you actually see this sort of like an impact coming of this economic slowdown globally? Like from my side, I do see that, but is it apparent from your side?
No, not yet. Um, we're just coming off the back of our best 2 months ever in our company's history in terms of bringing on like new revenue and new clients and sales and everything. So I haven't seen it. We've also got hundreds of clients in 136 different countries around the world. Of course, like some of them would see it more so than everything. I'm not across every single one of their businesses, so it's not like I'm sitting up in this tower and I can see all of those different things. But no, it hasn't been something that we have started to see. But if you look at like, the housing market, if you look at the market for secondhand cars, if you have a look at what are those kind of telltale signs in an economy, I'm seeing those signs. But from a business standpoint, as of now, no, I'm not.
That makes sense as well. And again, that's I'm not here to kind of like get you an interview like about those deepest secrets about investing in cryptos and then what cryptos you own. That doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to me right now while I've got you here. But I'm actually intending to show to everybody who's watching and viewing that right now on our YouTube account how it all comes together. Like I said, be it investment in cryptos, investment in stocks, regardless, investment in digital marketing agency may also kind of like get you certain returns, right, for the money you pay. So that's exactly what the way it seems that the companies are hiring you for. And getting slightly to the next point, many people usually ask you about success, right? About your best days, best sales days, just like you mentioned, which huge congrats, by the way, past 2 months records. But rarely ever people talk about their biggest fuck ups, right? So why don't we get here, if you don't mind? I mean, I have a question for your biggest business fuck up, as in the one thing that you wish hadn't happened to your business or in your business. What would that be?
There's so many fuck ups along the way. And even like it doesn't stop. Like you think that you definitely get smarter, but each year that you look back and you just say like I thought I knew a lot and I just knew so little, right? And I think that that's the telltale sign that you're growing. Staying small for too long, like the first year of King Kong, I guess I was kind of figuring out like, hey, like, is this a cash flow business or am I trying to build something bigger than myself? And I lost lots of big deals that would have been huge deals for my company in the beginning because I didn't have an office, because I wasn't all in and I didn't commit fully to going down the road. Trusting people in the business that shouldn't have been trusted, mentoring people that shouldn't have been mentored, not maybe giving other people more responsibility that should have been given more responsibility. So there's continuously going to be big things. And the thing that I always look for, like, is that all of those fuck ups and the things that have happened along the way have ultimately dictated the place that I'm in right now. And even though you could say like, hey, I wish I wouldn't have made that, Like you could be further ahead. You never know how things are going to play out. Like hindsight is always 2020. But yeah, there's just too many to name. There's so many mistakes and that I've made along the way.
I think everybody, who's actually reached certain level of success can always go. The answers are going to be similar, right? There are so many fuck
Yeah.
ups you can basically not count them even. So,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty not surprised to hear that a line. That there are similar experience, but then take it back to the success part, right? This also comes from your ultimate time management kind of like practices, right? At least if I were to believe what you were reading in a book, which I do. There's like a very strict time plan, daily routine schedule that you follow. Do you actually have certain like strategies, like time blocks, like some Eisenhower prioritization, or like any practices you actually introduce on a daily basis
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you stick them?
definitely. 100%, man. I manage my time ruthlessly. I've got 3 daughters under the age of 5, so, like, I owe it to them to
Congratulations.
manage my
I thought
time.
I thought in the book you had only two, no?
Yeah, I got a 4-month-year-old now.
Wow, congrats, man.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Army's growing. So yeah, basically like my week is like, I typically start my day at between 4 and 5 in the morning. I exercise in the morning. I do all of my meetings and anything like this on a Monday, on a Friday. And everything's in the calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. I'm big on just managing my energy and not just my time. So I kind of operate at like level 10 energy when I'm in the office. Like whenever I'm away from my family and my kids, like I don't just fuck around. Like I don't just mindlessly check email and do all of that stuff. Um, like I try to basically move the money needle and do the things that are going to drive and propel the company forward. And then I do like all of my deep work on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays right now as a schedule. And you can't contact me on those days. Everything's off. The phone's off. Like the chat is off, and I'm just in the zone working on something that's going to propel the company forward. And then, all of the output and managing the energy is set up in the recharge. It's like you look at professional athletes, and there's as equal emphasis put on recovery as there is performance. So yeah, I have like sauna and a cold plunge at night. I get a good, 8 hours of sleep every night, deep sleep. I've got all these crazy sleep hacks and red light therapy and all the stuff that I do. And I manage my sleep and measure it with an aura ring and, make sure that I'm active, even from the chair that I sit in to how many steps I get into a day. So yeah, I think that is like one of the secrets to being able to get a lot of output is just managing your own being, right? Your own energy levels. You can only push out into the marketplace in the universe with what it is that you've got inside. You can't give out something that you don't have.
Yeah, and that's where this power 4% kind of like rule of yours comes in, no?
Yeah. Like just like getting ruthlessly looking at the things that like, what I say, move the money needle. Like what are those 4% of activities that are going to drive, 64% of the output in the business, in the growth of everything that you're doing. And you can't do everything. And when you start a business, you're spinning all these plates and you're doing all of these different things. But as you scale, you can't do all of those things. So then it just begs the question, well, what are you going to prioritize and work on? What's important? How do you find out what's important? And in my opinion, it's those things that are going to propel the company forward. It's like the product and making the product incredible. And then once the product's incredible, is then absolutely marketing the living shit out of it.
Yeah. It's pretty logical when you know that actually from your book. However, many people actually probably never still read your book, which is hard to believe, but that's probably what it is. And for those who actually don't know and are watching that on our YouTube right now, the power 4% kind of like rule comes from a Pareto rule applied on a Pareto rule, right? Which can be also applied on a Pareto rule, and so on and
Correct.
so forth, looped basically. And if you were to kind of like just accept or deny, if Pareto rule actually adds like to this adds this business substance to everything you do, would you confirm that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that like Pareto's principle is fractal. So you can keep going. Like you do the 80-20, right? And then you do the 80-20 on the 80-20. And you can keep boiling it down. But for me, the reason that I have stopped it at like, the 4% that drives the 64% is because that there is like, there is going to be other things that are required than just the highest output stuff that you need to do, that are necessity, that they might not be the craziest needle movers, but more or less you're still going to have to be involved in them in some way. But yeah, if you look at it, you can apply it to everything, right? Do you know what I mean? Like people have applied it to fitness. I'm sure that you can provide it to cryptocurrency. It's a phenomena that is present, for whatever you look at.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and that also takes me to the next point, one of the last ones for today. Uh, do you also apply Pareto rule on your vacation time? How do you detach, man?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, I know that, like, so, like, I try to take, like, a holiday every quarter. COVID kind of threw the spanner in that, but I've just gotten back from overseas now. Um, but yeah, I just try to, when I am overseas, have a very good time, and when I am on holiday, have a very good time, and try to be as present as possible. And make sure that I'm doing the most. Like everything that I do, I bring a level of intensity to it, because it's just like I believe that if you're gonna do anything, you may as well go all in. If you're gonna go have a holiday, like have a good holiday, right? Have some fun, let your hair down, do those things. So it's like when it's rather than like constantly coasting, right? Or it's like someone that operates at like 60% or 70% when they're at work, and then they get home and then they're kind of on their phone and working a little bit and humming along in the background for another 10%, 20%. It's like just go as hard as you can when you're focused, and then off. It's like, looking at like sprinters. It's like doing a sprint as hard as you can and then resting and then sprinting and then resting. I think that that's like the best way to kind of look at it, is the way that I've got the most outcome out of what I do. I think that like Naval Ravikant, he's got like a thing where it's like you want to work like a lion, right? It's like most people work like cows where they just graze all day long and they just like eat grass. And then like a lion will take a
Jesus.
while to look for his prey and then he'll sprint and he'll get it. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's the kind of way that I work. When I'm involved in something, I really go, balls to the wall.
Nice, nice. But there's got to be some catch to it as well, man. I mean, do you ever like take any hobbies like outside of the work? There's got to be something, man.
Um, Hobbies, I like watching the UFC. I like fighting, so I watch that. And I
Do you do
work
some
out, I go
fighting?
for walks in nature. I don't do any fight. I've done lots of different martial arts, but I don't do anything right now.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I read, I go for walks for nature. I love having a good sauna. You should know about all about that being over in Poland. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are kind of like a little bit of generic answers. And anybody you ask, they're always going to tell you, oh, I love gym, I love music, I love films,
Yep.
and all that stuff. But isn't there like this one little thing? For me, it's singing. For instance, I sing in one of the best performing men's choir in Europe.
Yep.
It's called
Okay.
Cantores Minores. And for me, singing is this part. It's completely far off, the screens, far away from anything business related,
Yeah.
and it somehow just keeps me calm, right? Do you have anything completely like just of a different catch or like that, or just the
No, I
sound
think
stuff?
that like, in there's different seasons in my life. Like I definitely like was like really into martial arts and like drawing and music and all that kind of stuff growing up. But really like I'm very passionate about business. And then if I'm not doing business, like I'm hanging out with my family. I'm having some downtimes, but no, it's not like I'm not in a choir or anything like that. Or into like Brazilian jiu-jitsu or like river
Okay.
dancing or anything like that. I've kind of my yeah, my thing that I'm really passionate about is business. And I even find that when I go away on holiday and I'll be in a resort or a restaurant and all, and I've had some time off, and I'll be like, oh, like this place is really busy. Like, how many people work here, and like, oh, like I wonder how many people are in the kitchen, and how many people do they seat here, and how much it costs to build this thing, and then like just start running that stuff. So like
Yeah.
I'm passionate about that, and I'm passionate about helping people and transforming people. Like it's incredible that like, I've never spoken to you, but you have been influenced by my work all the way over on the other side of the world, and I hope that it's helped you. But that's the stuff that lights me up.
Got you. It is completely fair, right? And that I can fully confirm. It's already helped me a lot. And behind the scenes, we are actually having quite a couple of talks, which I hope to continue. But getting us closer to the final closing points. Back to the investment side, I can clearly see you doing investment watches. Do you have some catch
Yeah.
in that? Like you have a beautiful watch, man.
You show, yeah, I think you've got the same one, don't you?
I think I have this brownish dial, right? You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
you
I've
have the
got the
greenish,
green. I
no?
went with the green dial.
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, so for
That,
me,
that's
that
also
was
something
like,
for you. Yeah.
yeah, for me, it represents like, it's like I don't need to go out and buy a Rolex to turn the time. Like like let's just be clear that like, people make purchasing decisions completely, based on like status, right? And like it would like for me, when I looked at it, it was more so that, I set a challenge for myself for writing a sales letter and then basically going out and promoting that sales letter and then buying myself a watch from other
Every time you
people's
get
money.
success, and now we
Right.
have 20 watches on your wrist right now.
No, no. So like that was just like, yeah, it was just like a little treat. Like, it's a stupid thing to buy. I really am not a material person. I don't buy a lot of things for myself. I like wear black t-shirts every day and like jeans, and like I don't have like a whole closet full of shoes and all kinds of crazy stuff. There's got a few little nice things that I've got, but this was one of those things where it was like I set myself a target. I was like, hey, I will only buy this for myself. Either I can go out. And I wrote a sales letter on a 14-hour flight to Dubai. And I put the limitation to write the entire sales letter on that trip. And I said, look, if I can write a sales letter on this trip where most people would sit back and just watch some movies and eat the crap airplane food, if I can write a sales letter and then I can basically write a series of emails to my database and sell enough to buy this, then I'm going to do that for myself. And I ended up selling way more than the cost of my Rolex, and was just like, that's just like money out of thin air. So yeah, I went out and bought something stupid.
Just a little treat for yourself, huh?
Correct.
Good, 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 good. I mean, in all honesty, I'm flying in to buy actually like next week. So when you're there, by the chance, we can always grab some coffee on the side. But there are a couple of strategies that you can kind of like try to incorporate into running digital ads, right? There is like, of course, the Facebook side, the Google ads. But what about other platforms like TikTok? Like, are there any new social trends you're actually observing?
Yeah, definitely TikTok. They've got enough steam now to get my attention. I'm big on focus, so like Snapchat came up, and they obviously popped off, and there's been a few but it takes a few to kind of cross that chasm, right? And I understand that like time is finite and you only have so many units of time. So while a lot of people are like, hey, like I'm going to run LinkedIn ads and Facebook ads and Google ads and TikTok ads and Reddit ads and Twitter ads and do all of these things, like you're not going to get the same output in those other channels than if you focus on everything, because there's only so many units of time, right? So for me, kind of a platform needs to get mass market adoption, and TikTok is definitely there now with over 1 billion active users. There's still definitely a younger demographic on there than the people that I ideally target, but that's going to be an aging demographic, and it's definitely getting to a point where like it's going to get to very soon where you can't deny it anymore. So that's definitely a channel that's really exciting. We run lots of YouTube. That's also exciting. But realistically, for me, like I don't really care what the channel is. All right, I'm channel agnostic. I just go to where the attention is, where the eyeballs are. Netflix are going to be launching television ads shortly, and like there's going to be a lot of tension on Netflix. So I will definitely be running ads on Netflix. So for me, I know that the thing that is like, there's so many things that change in digital marketing, right? And in all these platforms, that it's impossible to predict what is going to change. So instead, I imply the inverse mental model of what is not going to change. What is going to be the case in 10 years from time on the internet? Well, I can guarantee you in 10 years' time on the internet, there will be a platform that have users congregating and hanging out on it. And that platform will want to monetize those users in the form of ads. And I will be able to buy ads and put a message in front of people.
You're
So
saying
I know
that
that
only because you're building this business behind the scenes.
no,
That
that's just
explains
an
it.
inevitability. There's going to be a platform that has eyeballs on it that are looking to monetize that. That's happened since the dawn of time, right? Think about radio. You're just buying ears. Television, you're buying eyeballs. The internet and Google, you're buying eyeballs. So that's what the game is. The currency is the tension. And it doesn't matter where it is, you just have to go to where it is. So if it's TikTok is the next thing, then that's where I'll go. And I will just use the same, like, that's why I study like the psychology, not the technology. I study like human beings and human behavior and what motivates people, and what is it that, how do you get people to act and tell stories and write copy and come up with compelling offers, because that is a timeless thing that will be happening in thousands of years from now.
Nice. I do have a short question on the psychology part in a second, but before we do, you're actually referring that. Listen, I've read your book about 3 times, right? Just also for the
Yeah.
preparation for the podcast itself. I know it probably learned, I learned it by heart, by heart this far. And when you think about it, it's actually truthful. We were saying that people browsing online are basically like, sleepwalking zombies. That's what you call them, right?
Yes.
Talk to me about that for a second.
Yeah, like, if you think about, like, I think that it's crazy. It's like there's like 90% of the content that people consume online is like shot on an iPhone or a smartphone, right? And it's like, so that's like the number one, like, lens that they're used to looking at images and videos through. And then if you think about the environment that these people are on, like, they've got their phone within hand's reach at any time. And, they've got half naked supermodels on Instagram, and Elon Musk smoking weed with Joe Rogan, and Dan Bilzerian feeding bears raw meat. And,
Hmm.
there's just, the internet is an absolute wild, chaotic place. And because there's so much stimuli and there's so much messages and notifications and lives and ads and pre-roll ads and constantly, like, just bombarding people, right? Is that unless what you're putting out is dramatic, you're just never ever going to cut through, because, like, people are in a constant state of distraction. Like, even when you talk to people, like, I like was in like India and Dubai, and like just looking, like, that everyone has smartphones and everybody's glued to those smartphones, right? And it doesn't matter, even like rich or poor, young or old. It's like the universal thing. So they're like, they're sucked into it. They're plugged into the matrix. There's all this stimuli that's being constantly thrown out at them. Is that you really need to work hard to hijack people's attention, right? Like, you have to steal their attention because they're in a daze. And unless it is very dramatic and unusual and different, then it's like the message that you're putting out is just going to be dead on arrival, because, like, there's, YouTubers, and there's just so much crazy stuff that's going on from all different angles, with like who can put the most outrageous thumbnail to get the click, and the opener and opening loops and all of the crazy stuff that goes in, right? That if you don't look at it through that lens, then everything will fall flat.
Got you. And, uh, one of the then final questions. Then again, we keep adding to those final questions because I
A
actually
never-ending
enjoy that.
list of final questions
Yeah, I
now.
actually enjoy that. We could go on and on, man. But like, why do people like numbers so much, right? You're referring so much, so many times in the like headline creating, and everywhere you go, the catchy kind of like just seems to be also around the numbers. Like, why do people
Yeah.
anchor around the numbers so much?
Yeah, I think it's just because it gives people a mental image for them to wrap their head around. Like if I said like, here's everything that you need to know about crypto, like that's not intriguing. Either I said, here are the only two things that you need to know about crypto, right? It's like, well, what are those two things, right? It creates a gap in the mind that people don't feel comfortable leaving there, and that they need to close that gap and find out what those things are. So like we are very curious, like, curiosity driven animals. And like we want to know those things. It's like, why are the number one selling magazines in the world about gossip? Because people like they just like that drives people wild. Like the only thing that people care about is gossip and drama, and it's because they want to close the lap. They want to close the gap of this information gap that they don't have. And unless numbers are just like a cheat code to do that. If there's five things, the only five things that you must know, or like these are the three things, the only three things that you need to know if you're running Facebook ads, it just creates an information gap that you want to know. Whereas you say, like, here is everything that you need to know about running Facebook ads, it's nowhere near as intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, building an intrigue is an art itself. Regarding those numbers, it's also, I think, very interesting. From the financial point of view, because people tend to anchor around those round numbers often, right? And this is exactly what makes it, so-called supports and resistances in the market, because so many people believe certain number, has a certain value attached to it, right? The more people believe, the more actually of a self-fulfilling prophecy it becomes. And this is actually where, again, all comes together, right? There is no like classification that what works for digital marketing is not going to work for your crypto investments, and then vice versa, right? It's actually pretty universal laws. And for many people who are not aware, this is called also prospect theory, right? Where many people are more driven by the fear of losses rather than the actual willingness to gain. And that's also what makes us as the people so irrational, and at the same time probably so easily fall into like those mind traps that Sabri's just described. And one of the questions, unless you want to add something to it, Sabri, um, but the next of the final questions then, uh, your golden tip. We have this custom so that our each and every single guest of ours, has this chance to leave our listeners and viewers with one final takeaway. This golden tip. What would that be from Sabri Suby, the legend himself?
The golden tip, just as broad, generic, it can be anything.
That's your choice,
Yeah,
right?
sure. I think that like the number one thing is the audience is very varied. My background is obviously sales and marketing. I think that the number one underlying thing that has driven to quote unquote my success is controlling my effort, right? Like there's so many different factors. And even in a market where people could say like, hey, this is speculation or this is that or this, like there's always going to be an excuse for whatever field that you're in. If you look at like most people that had a dream and wasn't able to realize that dream, they have a whole story that they tell themselves as to why that wasn't happen, right? It'll be the same people that bought at the height of crypto and then they lost a bunch of money. They have a story as to why that happened to them. And it's usually like them deferring to something outside of their own self. They're surrendering control to an outside force and a lack of resources to why they aren't where they want to be, for whatever reason that might be, right? And it just comes down to like successful people do all the things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. They're not willing to sustain large losses. They're not willing to risk money. They're not willing to put in a backbreaking amount of effort in order to get, an incredible outcome. So there are so many factors to everything that involves in you being successful in whatever you do, right? Timing, the market, effort, competitors, all of those kind of things. And they're always going to be present in any market. But the one constant is that you having the ability to control the amount of effort that you put into things. And if there's one thing that I have seen and I see, a trend to, is that this whole kind of mindset around that you can expect to get a breakthrough outcome without putting in a breakthrough effort. And that just hasn't been consistent in my life. If yes, people can get short-term wins and then they can start a startup and have some really big tailwinds and have a bit of success, but you look at the long extended people that have stacked wins throughout the course of their life, and they've put an enormous amount of effort in, and there's no you can't like point to something that's outside of your effort. Like, you can control that. That's something that you can control. No one can take that from you. So realistically, it's just about looking at whatever it is that you're trying to be good at and whatever it is that you're trying to do, and managing that effort, and just understanding that you might be in a less favorable position to other people, but the one thing that you can rely on is your ability to put in just a sickening amount of work to make the outcome that you want to come into fruition.
Wow, that's a quite a rolling chain of most beautiful words I've probably encountered in quite some time. And this also kind of comes to me, just comes one as with your single, something that you call the single parent mother work ethic, right? This is all kind of like somehow interconnected. And like I said, we could go probably on and on if it hadn't been for your calendar schedule. So I'm not going to be this hardest guy. I'm going to put in the final stop right here. And ladies and gentlemen, we've just got one of the biggest sales masters in the planet right now, the founder of King Kong, one of the fastest growing digital marketing agencies in the planet, again, in the world, all over the planet. Regardless, wherever you go, you're always going to hear about Sabri Suby. So this has been an amazing pleasure, Sabri, talking to you and having such a wealth of knowledge and how it all interconnects, financial markets, investments, sales, marketing, it all becomes one. Thanks to your beautiful rundown on these thoughts today. Thank you so much for coming over, Sabri.
No problems. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Amazing. Talk to you soon, guys. See you guys on the next shows. Bye bye.